As the city and its most famous landmark, the Tyne Bridge, bask in the morning sunshine, an incredible total of 25,000 people of all ages, shapes and sizes, and from every conceivable background, are lined up on Newcastle's central motorway, awaiting the gun which will set them off on their 13-mile, 192.5-yard journey to the cliff tops at South Shields, an exact half-marathon distance in this largest road run in Europe. The weather, as you can see, happily has been kind to us. It's a dry, sunny morning, there's very little wind, and in fact I think it could get rather warm for those runners as the massed ranks prepare to set out on the route which takes them from the city centre at the town moor, down and over the famous Tyne Bridge, out through Gateshead, along the fringes of Jarrow and Hebburn, before turning for South Shields and what is surely one of the most picturesque finishes to any road race, the Lees at South Shields. Well, what a remarkable sight that is. Around 20 seconds to go to the start, and those 25,000 runners now ready and waiting for the great moment, the moment they've trained for through the dark days of winter, through the spring, ready now for the off. Off goes the gun, and this tremendous wave of humanity pours its way down those two carriageways of Newcastle's central motorway, off on the 13.1-mile journey to the Lees at South Shields. And no matter how many times we see that sight, and we've seen a few of them over the last few years, it's still one of the most stirring spectacles in sport. All waves and smiles, of course, at this stage of the race. Total confidence that every one of them is going to make it to the finishing line. And of course, in this Great North Run, the finishing rate is perhaps higher than almost anywhere else. Last year, only around 450 out of 24,750 didn't make it to the finishing line, and that's an enormously high finishing standard. Well, with me in the commentary box for the Great North Run 1985 are Stuart Story and Brendan Foster. Let me come firstly to you, Stuart. And as I said, I think no matter how many times we see that, that still is the most remarkable sight, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is, and the full range of running abilities represented in that mass of bobbing heads as they wend their way at a rate that really is determined, well, who knows how it's determined. It's very difficult to move at much more than a walking pace early on. But a marvellous sight it is. Personal stopwatches have been started, and they're looking at this array here. The better of the athletes, that is to say the faster ones, are moving left, right on your picture, and underneath this carriageway. And those lower down, the fun runners, the joggers, are moving over the top on the left of picture.
And already that leading bunch has whittled down. I can see in the lead already Alistair Hutton. He's probably the race favourite. The Scotsman who set a Scottish marathon record in London, finishing in third place. He came here for real. He came here to run a race. He's trained for it seriously, and he's got every intention of trying to make this his first venture in the Great North Run. And he's definitely out for real.
And notice that they're still going past the start line. And we've the leading runners are now beyond the 1 mile.
It looks like the organisation is going quite smoothly, because we're just coming up to 6 minutes and almost all the runners have crossed the start line. Actually, it was quite funny, because last year we had someone from the RVI. We had someone from the RVI who told me that one of their patients had entered and started at number 25,000, which is 3/4 of a mile beyond the start, and he actually dropped out before he got to the start. So we've got actually a distinction. We've held a road race where someone dropped out before they started. And there's the sight that they all come for. The leaders crossing the Tyne Bridge. In a few minutes' time, that bridge will be absolutely packed on both sides. The crowds watch this one. They take their photographs because it becomes they send the pictures to their exiled Geordies all around the world. But that's the sight of Tyneside that everyone recognises. And there's the leading group there. Alistair Hutton, Scottish marathon record holder. Next to him, John Graham, former record holder for the marathon for Scotland. Fraser Clyne on the right with a headband. Steve Kenyon, Mike McLeod just behind them. Bernie Ford. The good athletes, the ones we've been thinking about, are already there. They're already serious about this event.
And as the leaders cross the Tyne Bridge, way back at the start, still this massive crocodile of runners making its way down the motorway. It'll take a very long time for them to thin out. Most famous of landmarks, the Tyne Bridge, opened in 1928, took 3 years to build, and of course was the model for the later and equally famous Sydney Harbour Bridge.
Gateshead Stadium and the leading group are just alongside the stadium now. We can see the lead cars there and a bunch of runners, including Mike McLeod, who won the 5,000 meters at Gateshead Stadium yesterday in the match against France and Czechoslovakia. Mike says that if the race isn't too quick early on today, he fancies his chances to make it a great North double weekend. And in the lead there, Steve Kenyon in the blue vest. Right next to him, Bernie Ford. John Graham from Scotland, the former Scottish record holder for the marathon. Fraser Clyne with a headband behind him. Mick McLeod just right next to him in the red vest of Elzik Harriers. Alistair Hutton, the pre-race favourite, the Scottish record holder for the marathon. Right behind him, Mike Grattan, who won the London Marathon. Laurie Spence in the blue and yellow vest there. And Graham Lang from Aberdeen, who represented Scotland in the Commonwealth Games. So we've got a really good field here of great marathon runners, good 5,000 metre runners, a silver medalist from the Olympics in the 5,000 metres. Bernie Ford, a former representative in the Olympic Games. This is an excellent field, very, very strong presence of the Scots, and this is the closest place they can come for international competition, and they've got it today. Steve Kenyon we haven't seen for too long, and Steve's pressing along there at the front, and John Graham, who many people rate as one of the most talented marathon runners of the lot. Maybe he's going to try and make his impression today.
Just a little look back, and there is the 1 3/4 mile mark. The leaders are now twice as far ahead, and Jeff is most certainly here.
I reckon Jeff could very well have sore arms at the end of this race if he's going to hold the banner high for the whole of the 13.1 miles.
And they're back in the lead. Steve Kenyon pressing along, the blue and white vest, may I say the receding hairline. Next to him, John Graham, and right behind him, Bernie Ford. Mike McLeod there, who probably will just hang in there as long as he can, because if he's still with them within a mile of the finish, he'll start thinking about maybe winning the race. Right behind Mike McLeod, Alistair Hutton, as we said earlier. But the pace is obviously fairly quick because the group is beginning to thin out. I can just see Graham Lang tailing off the back of the group. So you can tell the pace is increasing. They're coming up at about 5 miles, 18.5 minutes. They're not at the 5 mile mark yet, but we'll hopefully see them around then. But Steve Kenyon, it's nice to see him back after a long spell out with injury. And maybe this is the chance for Steve Kenyon to come back into something like his former record-breaking form, because he won the trials for the Olympics when they were held on this course here. So he knows the territory. And he's a good half marathon runner. He was a good 10,000 metre runner. But as I said, we haven't seen him in this kind of form for too long.
Bridge, incidentally, at the time of its opening 57 years ago, cost £1,200,000, an enormous sum of money for the time. In fact, other than for essential repairs and stress testing, the Great North Run is the only time the Tyne Bridge is closed to traffic. Surely when those early engineers completed this marvellous structure, they could hardly have imagined that one day 25,000 people would run across it simply for fun.
As we overlook the Heworth Metro Centre, you can see the crowds on either side of the road, and the runners will be approaching the first feeding station here, and which in every piece of information we've given them, we're telling them to take a drink here. And as you can see, the sun is fairly overhead now, and it's obviously quite warm out there today. So they'll be helped along by a drink at the first feeding station.
Actually, this part of the course is quite a long uphill. It's a slight uphill inclination to the Heworth roundabout. Obviously, the runners at the front will not be as affected as those at the rear of the groups, but Kenyon actually doing very well here. He's starting to push it along just a little bit. Alistair Hutton in about 6th or 7th place at the moment, content to let the others do the work. Graham in 2nd place, Bernie Ford behind him, then Mick McLeod tucked in. Grattan still latched on the end in the red vest. The first feeding station at Felling Bypass, the first of the feeding stations. There are 5 in all, and very well manned, and I can hear some music.
The 11th hour Keeley Band, in fact, they're providing the entertainment at this part of the route. Steve Kenyon takes that leading group, who really are pushing it along a bit as they come through the feeding station. Once again, the crowds have turned out on Tyneside to cheer on those runners. Steve Kenyon missing the first feeding station, comfortable enough. Several of the others, though, taking advantage to take on some water, a little orange juice perhaps. Back on the Tyne Bridge, as you can see, the back markers. Well, not exactly the back markers, there's still quite a number to come after those, but they've only covered 1.5 miles. Coming up to 24 minutes. So they're not exactly sprinting, but this isn't meant to be a sprint. This is all about a fun run. Enjoy it, enjoy the great spectacle, enjoy the occasion, and make sure you make it to South Shields. Previous years are anything to go by, almost all of them will. And there's the first of the fancy dress contestants, the 2 clowns.
No change at the front. Kenyon from Bernie Ford, Alistair Hutton, then John Graham, and look at Mick McLeod just tucked in the middle of that group. Just to remind you that Mick McLeod won the event in 1981 and 1982. He has the fastest time recorded for this half marathon at 62 minutes and 44. That was his 1982 time. There really have been some great athletes competing here, and none greater than Carlos Lopez, who was the winner in 1983.
I'm not quite sure what this is coming towards us, but we'll have a look for you. I think your guess is as good as mine. Ah, someone's been watching Bernie Clifton.
Steve Kenyon is keen today. He's pressing on. He's been at the front all the way, and he's pushing the pace along. It's a very early bid to try and win this race, if that's what Steve's trying to do. I mean, I would be holding back a little at this point. I would be reluctant to lead by the 2 or 3 yards that he's leading by with a group of such caliber here. And they come past the second feeding station, which I noticed this time the lead runners have ignored. They're more keen on the serious race itself. And Bernie Ford has moved right alongside Steve Kenyon. Just behind them, John Graham in the black vest. Mike McLeod is doing nothing serious. He's participating in the event. He's holding back. He's not going to expend too much energy. Surprised to see just behind that group. So's Mick. He just glanced over his shoulder there, and he was surprised to see Alistair Hutton drift off the back of the group, because if Alistair's serious about winning the thing, there's no way he should be drifting at this point in time. And there you can see Bernie. And Mick McLeod's noticed Bernie. He's decided he's going to just run alongside him, let him know I'm there. They've competed many times against each other, and Bernie's making a strike. He has certainly made a bid. Glancing round, seeing, and now he's slowed down. He's looking over his shoulder, and he's looking. He said that that break didn't do anything for me, and the group's still with me. Mike McLeod responded to that surprisingly well, because Mick's had a troubled injury spell recently. I didn't think Mick would run as well as he did yesterday and be as competitive as he is today.
Well, that serves a dual purpose, prepared for any showers we might get, and at the moment I think coming in useful as a sunshade. Well, it's not the approved gear for a runner, but I think he'll make it to the finishing line. The leaders now reaching the halfway stage.
And as you say that, the time is just fractionally over 30 minutes. Now that gives us a clear indication that, as Brendan was saying earlier, this is a fast pace. And I think we're going to see something very close to the hour here. Bernie Ford, Aldershot, Farnham and District, now 32 years old, leading one of Britain's most consistent distant runners, of course. Over the past decade, he clocked 27 minutes 43.74 for 10,000 metres back in 1977, and that is the 9th fastest time recorded by Britain. That's his pedigree, and he really does continue to pump out some class races, both particularly now on the road. Kenyon not content and moves out again.
There's the Cayley Band, the 11th hour Cayley Band. Hopefully that'll be encouraging for the runners, a little pep in their step, as they say. The cups of water, the cups of orange and the damp sponges, very welcome, even if it's only to pour over your head.
And still Steve Kenyon leads the race. He's keen to do well today. He's pressed on at every opportunity. He's been joined by Bernie Ford at one point, and Mike McLeod. Alistair Hutton has rejoined the leading group. I'm pleased to see that, because I thought at one point maybe Alistair was only slowing down for a drink.
You join Archie McPherson on the Felling bypass.
Well, you know, we're 4.5 miles here from the start. This is the first watering hole, and I have with me, I think, the St Trinian's Marathon League. What's this in aid of, man or woman?
Well, it's sort of just our club's Claremont Road Runners. We decided it's not a race you can really run quickly, so why not have a bit of fun?
Well, who's the man and who's the woman here? Can you sort them out?
Well, I haven't worried.
Now, it must take a lot to get you to dress up like that.
Oh, no, not at all. Bit of fun.
Every Friday night. Now, are you a club of some kind?
Yes, Claremont Road Runners.
And does this not hold you back? Wouldn't you like to do a better time without all of this?
Sponsorship, that's what we're doing it for.
Who's sponsoring you?
Different causes, MS for me. Who are you doing it for?
Sanderson Children's Fund, which is based at Freeman Hospital. They're getting sponsorship from me anyway.
I see. Well, it's all in a good cause, but I think if I hold you back any longer, you'll have to do about 1,000 lines. Let's see how you can move. Bye.
And as we stay with those pictures, passing the Cayley Band, there's Jimmy Savile. And I think he's going to join them for a quick jig.
Well, we're at the 8-mile marker now, and look, there is a distinct breakaway, and Kenyon now well away from the rest of the field. And one must be surprised at the margin that he's opened up. And it was 39 minutes, Brendan, and 15 seconds at the 8-mile mark. So the pace is very fast indeed, and this type of running has caused it. Look at this.
That's right, you can see the gap there. That is quick running. It's well under 5-minute mile pace for each mile, which is going to bring them home fairly close to that course record of Mike McLeod's. But as I said earlier on, Steve was really keen right from the beginning. He was keen to press the lead. I was surprised that he was as aggressive as he was after having that background of injuries that he's had, and it's an excellent international field he's got behind him. But this is a serious bid to try and win the race, and he looks really strong. He looks comfortable. He's striding out well. We can see the following group. It's led by Alistair Hutton, who we thought would be the favourite for this race. Bernie Ford there, right behind Alistair Hutton. Mike McLeod in that group, who doesn't want to do too much at this point, just past Bernie Ford, goes into third place. Nick Braun and John Graham we can see fading away in the distance.
Back at the Gateshead roundabout, still collecting as he goes. That's Alan Beatty from Ryton. And he predicted a finish time of 1 hour 30 minutes. I'm not sure whether that was tongue-in-cheek or whether he's collecting rather more than he expected, but he's not going to be anywhere near 1.5 hours at South Shields. But he's certainly going to have collected an awful lot of money for charity. There's Steve Kenyon, 5.25 from Bolton. Still looking very comfortable, way out in front. Made his break, and although anyone would hesitate to say it's decisive at this stage, he certainly is going to be very, very hard to beat now.
There looks to be a break into the second position. Mick McLeod it is. He's pushing on in pursuit because he knows that he can't wait too much longer before he makes an attack, and he must be very worried that Kenyon has got away and still looks very comfortable. There's no way that he's coming back at the moment. Well, we're now in the South Shields area, and behind that bus we've got the first of the wheelchairs, and you just see him on the left, and we reckon that's Mark Tong. And if the computer is correct, he's 15 years old and he's from Morpeth. And in the instructions before this event took place, the competitors in the wheelchairs were told on that long downhill stretch to be very, very careful indeed.
Well, there's the sea in the background, South Shields from the air, and as Mark Tong heads for the line and the wheelchair race, there's a roundabout around which the runners will come and head towards that mile-long finishing straight on the Lees. Good aerial view of South Shields on a sunny Sunday morning, and the leader, Steve Kenyon, still looking very comfortable, still running easily. Just through 11 miles at 52.5 minutes.
Right now, you're not running on your own, you've got a Teddy.
Mick McLeod doesn't seem to have made any headway at all in pursuit. They let him go, hoping that he would come back to them later on, but that isn't the case at the moment, and he's heading down towards the sea and the welcome refreshing breezes from that sea in Marsden, part of the South Shields, of course. There's the first competitor home in the wheelchair, Mark Tong, 2025, 15 years old, and we reckon that he's outside of the record approximately 76. But Kenyon now, see the downhill stretch, taking advantage of that. It's only a slight incline. He got a little knock there.
But he's really accelerating now along the front, and he's been encouraged by those crowds. He's probably got in mind what kind of time he's going to finish in, and he'll probably be pretty keen to try and compete with Mike McLeod's best ever time of 62 minutes and 44 seconds. And I must say, this is one of the best runs I've ever seen from Steve Kenyon. Even though over the years I've been a good, big fan of his, I've seen him run some good road races and some good track races, but I've never seen him run as fluently and as smoothly and as confidently as he has done today.
And a little glance over the shoulder from McLeod, just saying, well, I must make sure of at least second place. I think he's a little bit further behind than that shot portrays. It's quite a large margin of deficit, and I think the posture of his running seems to indicate that he's settled for second place.
Well, there's a race for third, fourth and fifth there. I think I can see Alistair Hutton in amongst it. And they're not far from the finish, those people. 1 hour, 2 minutes and 7, 8 seconds. That's good running by third, fourth and fifth place. And there's Steve Kenyon. You can see the crowds are thickening up. We're really close to the finish now. And Steve Kenyon has certainly given them a show. They're at the point where they split the runners later on for the finish, so he's just turned right now. He's very, very close to the record. 36, 37, 38. Mike McLeod's record of 2 minutes and 44 seconds. It's going to be remarkably close. Oh, 43 or 44. We'll have to wait on the official time, but what a run. And now we know why Steve Kenyon was so far ahead of Mike McLeod, who's run his second fastest ever in the Great North Run. I can tell that already from Steve Kenyon's victory. So that helps explain why Steve Kenyon cruised away from this field, because we did say how strong a field it was, how good internationals they were. And Mick McLeod will probably get the biggest cheer of the day, because he's, as I say, twice winner of the Great North Run. Very, very popular athlete in this part of the world, has been for many, many years, runs all the local road races, is highly respected by his club mates and other club members in the Northeast. And Mick's coming in there, 1 hour, 3 minutes and 29 seconds. A good run, Mick, well done.
Certainly was marvellous. And look at the battle for the places. Bernie Ford, Merv Bramall and Alistair Hutton. Ford, what a good run he's had. Very gritty run. He looked quite tired when we last saw him, but he's got a new lease of life with that slight incline. And look at this. Powerful piece of running. And checks that individual time. Just out of those places, Merv Bramall. Alistair Hutton, the pre-race favourite, behind him. A very competitive run by all of these athletes. John Graham just coming down through the finish line. Competitive by those men in third, fourth, fifth and sixth. And the scene absolutely magnificent, and a welcome venue, of course, for the finishers. That looked like Mike Grattan. Grattan it is, coming through the finish, and that's not a bad performance from him. He's had lots of disappointment of late, and that will be a little bit of an encouragement for him, the former London Marathon winner. He's had lots of injury problems. And the battle's on for the places now. Laurie Spence in the yellow vest, the blue shorts. Then Fraser Clyne. Spence from Clyne. And whilst we see the men coming through, we ought to mention that Rosa Mota of Portugal is leading the women's race. We shall see her soon.
And I think I can see Rosa Mota coming along the seafront. The tiny figure, the smallest track and field medalist in Los Angeles when she won a bronze medal in the ladies marathon, against just beating into fourth place Ingrid Christensen there in Los Angeles. So she's run quickly, running along the seafront.
Yeah, the completion. And look at the stride, taking full advantage of this slight downhill slope. And just keep your eye on that clock. Encouragement all the way for Rosa Mota. 5'2", only 7 stone, 11 pounds. 27 years old yesterday, and what a birthday present this will be. Very, very fast, attacking piece of running, looking just to the right. And Brendan, a very impressive run.
Well, I remember seeing Greta Waits last year, and she's shattered Greta's record, and Greta went off to finish second in the Olympics, so what a great run by Rosa Mota there. Under 1 hour 10 minutes. That's the first time anybody's ever run under 1 hour 10 minutes in the UK. I think we'll have a little while to wait for Sarah Rowell, who we hear is in second place in the ladies' race. Once again, it's difficult to pick out the women when they're surrounded by these male club runners, but just for me, looking at the quality of some of these club runners, tells you how good a run that was by Rosa Mota. She came here to run well, she did run well, and she shattered a great record which was set last year by Greta Waits.
On forward from Feltham.
In fact, I think that Anne Ford is in fact second. As we were saying that some of the women athletes were obscured by the men, well, here's a good case. She's in second. So Anne Ford from Hounslow, now 33 years old, is second, and we apologise to her for losing her in that array, but what a marvellous performance.
What a day for the Ford family. Bernie Ford third in the men's race, and his wife Anne Ford second in the women's race. And she'll take great satisfaction having beaten Sarah Rowell, who's a UK record holder for the marathon. So that's a famous victory for Anne Ford.
Sarah Rowell, in fact, was a former county hockey player and only took up running 3 years ago. Ran in the London Marathon under her aunt's name. And that was the start of what has become a very successful career in distance running for Sarah Rowell, the girl from Dartford. She's in third place in the women's race, behind Rosa Mota and Anne Ford. What a marvellous scene that is. As we look down in South Shields on this day of days, the men's result in the 1985 Thorney MI Heating Great North Run. Steve Kenyon from Bolton, the winner. Mike McLeod, the local man, in second place. Bernie Ford taking third. Merv Bramald in fourth. And Alistair Hutton, the Scot, in fifth.
As easy as it looked? No, it's never easy. I was under the impression when I came here that the course was supposed to be flat, but it was quite a toughish little course, really. Although it's a course I'm familiar with, having won the 3A's marathon on this course back in 1982.
Mike, listening to the commentary, it said that you were never seen to be running as fluently. Have you been training particularly hard for this?
I've been training. I've had a lot of injury problems, and this really is only about my 7th race, I think. But I've been improving every week. I can tell I feel stronger in training, and today was sort of fruition of that hard training.
So how did you find the course?
As I said, fairly hard, but I was pleased with the way I ran, and I wanted to try and take control of the race from the start, which I feel is what I did.
Did you think Mike was ever going to catch you?
That's what was my main concern. That's why I wanted to, as I say, take control from the start, because with people like Mike Mcalpine, it's obvious speed within the race. You can't sit around and wait for these people, you know, getting into sort of the last 2 miles of the race. So I wanted to try and run it hard from the start and try and take the sting out of these people.
Were you aware of just how fast it was going right the way through the race?
I was, because obviously the clock was out in front there, and I was really pleased with the time. Up to about 10 miles, we went through 10 miles in about 47:15, which I was very pleased with. But the last 3 miles were slightly uphill and into a little bit of a breeze, and I just began to feel the pace a little bit. And if it had been more flat or downhill, I could have possibly dipped under the record.
Second place, you were behind a good runner.
Yes, I was. I tried to follow and Sarah Rowell. Sarah dropped before 4, and then Rosa took off at the 4 Mile feed station, and then I found it hard work to try and catch her.
You had a little bit of a problem at the feeder station, did you?
Yes, I'm not used to these beakers, so I dropped it and sloshed it all over me.
But you're happy with the way you ran? It's part of your training programme, okay?
Yes, it's fine, yes. It's the first real hard one I've raced, so I was very pleased.
You set a fair stiff pace for yourself?
Yes. Yeah, I was sort of aiming for about 70, but I was about a minute off.
How does that fit in for what you're aiming for?
Well, I haven't got really that many aims. I want to do another marathon in about October, but with 2 children it's very difficult to plan a hectic schedule.
Oh, well, look at this. Well, the run, we've said, has spanned the full range of ability, but here's evidence of the age range too. Young Keith Mcalpine, he's only 7.
Now there's a heartwarming sight. Jimmy Savile encouraging in one of the wheelchair contestants who's decided she wants to walk those last few yards and cross the finishing line under her own steam, so to speak. And isn't that tremendous? Encouraged all the way by James Savile.
You're rather pleased to get that medal?
Yes, I mean, it's nice to be able to say that you've run it. I'm not so sure I could go any further, but I think really it's just a great event to be part of, in a way.
It's the second time you've run it. Has it got more difficult or easier?
Well, I don't know. It all stemmed to the fact that about a few years ago when I was in Argentina with David Coleman, he said to me that I was in such bad condition, the only hope I ever had was to try and do some running. So I hope somebody tells him, well, he won't be very impressed with the time, but at least I managed to get round, which is I suppose the main point of the exercise for someone like me.
Why did you pick the Great North Run to do it in then?
Well, I don't know really. I think it was Brendan trying to convince me that I wouldn't be able to come and do it, and I thought I'd just take up the challenge and see what happened. But my wife comes from Newcastle, so there's a bit of a local connection, and I like the people, and it's been a very pleasant weekend.
So you've got the medal to prove to Brendan now that you've done it?
Well, he's promised to buy me a drink tonight, and if that happens, then it'll be a completely successful weekend, but I've got my doubts about that.
Steve, you've got a good excuse not for running in this year's Great North Run, I hope?
Yes, I've got loads of excuses. The main one is a bad leg and it's too far and I'm too lazy, you know, loads of excuses.
But it's been a good weekend for you.
It's been very enjoyable. You know, a great meeting at Gateshead yesterday. Not so good for me, I got beat, but and then Great North Run today, which is one of the best days of the year as far as I'm concerned. It's been a really good weekend. It didn't rain either.
What did you think of the race today?
Oh, it was an excellent race. I had a word with Mickey afterwards, and he was a little bit. He asked me to kick him up the backside because he felt as though he'd maybe let Steve Kenyon have the race on a plate a little bit because he wasn't sure how he was going to feel. But Steve Kenyon ran very, very well. But like I say, we've had a great day today, and I know some of my friends have been coming in running some very fast times, and I'm sure that you know, it's been just the right type of day for people to get personal bests and things, and I'm sure they will do right down the field.
What do you think about Mike's record being equalled?
Like I say, marvellous performance. It was windy. You know, the conditions weren't as good as I think as when Mickey did the record. But you know, Steve had a good group chasing him, and once he'd got that gap, he's a very good runner once he does get out in front as well. And he enjoys front running, and I think he was able to relax a little bit when he got the gap. Mickey chased him hard, but just couldn't quite close it.
Your mate Brendan Foster said he never saw Steve running so well.
No, you know, a few of us have just been saying that. I think. Once or twice he does put in really good performances, and it does tend to be if he can get away from the field and he can relax a little bit out in the front on his own. And because he was able to do that today, I think that's why he ran so well.
And there the three winners of the 1985 Great North Run. On the left, Steve Kenyon. On the right, Rosa Mota from Portugal. And between them, the winner of the wheelchair race, 15-year-old Mark Tong from Morpeth.
Well, there we are, carnival atmosphere up in the northeast today.